Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Coffee with the Critters, where I live stream every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, unless otherwise noted. And the only time I live stream at a different time is if I'm traveling or if I have a guest, like I do this morning, from a different time zone, but she was generous enough to get up bright and early to join us this morning. So for those that may be new and not familiar with our services, my name is Laura Joseph. I'm owner of the Animal Behavior Center. We're an international educational center where we help people all over the world through our live streaming services, empowering animals and the people that care for them. And we do that through our live streaming services, which can be found on our website, theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. There you will see we have annual memberships to our live streaming services, where we focus on the science of behavior, applied behavior analysis using B.F. Skinner's laws of behavior to keep animals happy, healthy, and thriving in our care. So for people who want to reach me, you can reach me personally at Laura, Lara, at theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. Let's see if we have anything else. Real quick, for those of you, we do send out a newsletter a couple of times a month. You can find that on our website, or you can join right here on our Facebook page. And I know last week I was cut short, but we had a really popular topic last week. If you did not watch it, it was on enrichment. And we focused on enriching parrots, but definitely not limited to. There was a lot of science studies and statistics in that live stream. And I want to thank you, everybody who shared that, because it was very heavily shared. And even today, I may be speaking with our guest, Diane Garrod, who is a professional dog trainer and much more. We are going to be talking about, Diane's going to focus on dogs, and I may bring in topics, how it's relevant to other species, but we're going to focus on working with the animal in the here and now, and we may touch on enrichment, because enrichment is an extremely important topic. So good morning, Ruby. Hey, Jamie. Kim, Tim, Nancy, Maggie, everybody, good morning, and thank you for joining us. We're going to jump right into it. I am going to go ahead and bring on Diane. Diane, are you ready? Okay. Good morning, Diane. Thanks for joining us again.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, at the beginning of the year, I did a New Year's live stream asking people who they would want to see, like past guests that people would want to see again, and your name was mentioned very heavily, so here you are.
Well, thank you, everyone, and good morning, everybody who's logging on. I appreciate it. It's early here. So
what time is it? 6:06 your time?
6 a.m. 6 a.m. So I was up at 4:30 trying to gather myself together.
Well, I appreciate that, Diane. So before we get started, Diane, I'm sure when you and I talk, this hour is going to fly, pun intended. But I want to go ahead for those that are joining us, because I shared it across a couple different platforms this morning. Those that may be joining us that may not be familiar with the work that you do, I'd like to go ahead and read your bio. So maybe you can tell us a little bit also, Diane, about the different certifications you have that you mentioned here, because it's reading your bio. You're a founding member of the Pet Professional Guild for Force-Free Trainers. That is a group that a lot of people hear me talk about a lot, PPG. And you provide private consultations working with dog aggression and behavior cases through Canine Transformations Learning. Canine Transformations is home to the Canine Emotional Detox, the first systematic stress release program for challenging dogs with over 700 cases researched. Diane is an expert in aggression and behavior issues with multiple certifications, which includes resource guarding and working with dogs that have behavior challenges with people and other dogs. Diane is an admin of groups for force-free trainers, solving the aggression and behavior puzzle, the Canine Emotional Detox, stress release for challenging canines, Canine Behavior Analysis and Science, RV Dogs on the Road, Training Tips and Tricks, Facebook groups. Diane is a writer for Barks from the Guild and author of Stress Release for Dogs, the Canine Emotional Detox, available wherever books are sold. She is working on 2 upcoming books based on dogs who guard resources in solving the aggression behavior puzzle. She has been on Barks, Books, and Banter, Coffee with the Critters, held Dogs Who Resource Guard class at Grisha Stewart School, and holds workshops worldwide in person and online. Diane has spoken on stress release in dogs and aggression to include multi-dog households, fighting at APDT Conference, Australia, PPG Conference in Florida, and multiple workshops around the United States. She will be a presenter with PPG Australia Conference in October of 2021. Are you really going to be there, Diane?
No, this is going to be online. I think just because of the continuance of COVID, everybody's having these online conferences these days. I've been to Australia in a couple of years ago when, we could travel.
Yeah, way back when.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Diane, do you mind telling us about the certifications behind your name? You have the PCT-A. Do you want to tell us?
And that's through PPG. And because we are all force-free in PPG and a continuing member, it's the Professional Canine Trainer Accreditation. Okay, that's what that means. That's what that's for. The BS is my Bachelor of Science in Communication and Journalism. So 2 degrees there.
Okay.
So it really helps me communicate with people that I'm working with, right? And then also I have a certification in animal behavior communication as well. And then the other ones are, I'm a Guild certified Tellington Touch practitioner and a force-free certified. I took actually the vet course when that came out.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Great. So Diane, I know your specialty is in, and correct me if I'm wrong, in working with canine aggression and stress.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to
Yes.
touch on the topic of canine aggression just so to give people a basic understanding?
Yeah, I think aggression is sometimes, with clients, they misuse it. They say, oh, my dog is aggressive. That might not be the case. So you see high level reactivity to certain types of things, right? Because in a nutshell, aggression to me means intent to do harm. And sometimes you see those dogs and they're very scary, very, very scary if you're seeing aggression cases, right? And they mostly are stressed. And if you can release that stress and get through that layer, you can start to see a dog that might be biddable and motivated to learn. I think that's really key when you're working with aggression. You have to have a dog that's biddable and motivated to learn.
And a lot of times with the term aggression, I know in the work that I do, you will see behaviors labeled as aggressions, such as showing different types of behaviors, whether the animal puffs up, whether a beak opens, whether teeth are shown, is usually due to lack of choices. A lot of times people use force because they don't understand there are other options to use. When you're seeing behaviors like this, Diane, is it usually from the same things?
Yeah, absolutely from the same things because people don't know how to deal with it. They're at their rope's end because they want to have a dog that is in their mind, that ideal dog. And this dog is not that dog. And so desperate people do desperate things. So they swat at the dog, or every time the dog does something, then they turn into a monster instead of learning techniques that could help them to reverse the behavior of that dog. What's going on in the environment, antecedents, of course. I like to be very specific about what it is and why the dog is doing it. What is he getting out of expending that energy to do that behavior? Especially when we're not dealing with wild animals like you're dealing with on a daily basis. Um, do you see a wild dog? I'm working with a dog from Mexico right now who is a former street dog that got a home with a foster and got adopted, and then the person passed away and he ended back up in rescue, and now he's rescued by someone here in the United States. He's not at all aggressive, but I've had other dogs that are that are, and people don't know how to handle them. And I hate to say it, but sometimes the rescues pair up these dogs who have these multiple problems with people who just can't handle the problem. And I'd like to see more work done in that area where dogs can be paired or not paired with their specific behaviors. Can an 80-year-old person handle a dog who is biting and biting others, biting them? All of these things happen. And so you see this on a daily basis, and exactly what you said, those things occur. They don't know what to do, how to do it. They're at their rope's end. So desperate people, again, do desperate things. They might send them off to an academy or something when other better solutions are available.
Yeah, people do what they know, and what they've been taught through their lifetime that works. When
Mm-hmm.
I was brought up, I was told, you should always be able to take food from a dog. A dog always needs to obey you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and what people, I think, forget are these are individual animals with their own histories, and genetics plays a big part, and how all that is important. I mean, I love the fact that you touched on the topic that a lot of shelters and rescues place dogs with people that may not be a good match, or the lifestyle isn't a good match, or the education isn't there. I would love to see the education be there in the shelters to make the future life for both the dog and the people a success, set them up
Mm-hmm.
for success.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
There was that's really good to touch on, because there was a parrot center here in Seattle who, when they sell a parrot, it actually is a center that sells the parrots. Okay, but you cannot have the parrot until you have a month of education with the parrot and learn how to handle it and what to do. And they don't release it if they see any indication that you're not going to know how to handle that parrot. And I really think that should be employed in a lot of the rescues. But I know that a lot of times it's a matter of time and volunteerism and money.
yeah. Well, I know a lot of rescues, parrot rescues out there, and I commend them for this. It also helps me continue the work that I do. Is in order to adopt a parrot from them, they have to join my annual subscription, the Parrot
Oh,
Project.
perfect. That would be perfect. Absolutely.
And
Um,
it's great, Diane, because then the rescue reaches out to me. We probably have a couple on here, and they'll say, Laura, this person is adopting a parrot. Here's their name. We're signing them up for the Parrot Project. And then what I do is I take that name and put it underneath that shelter, and I keep an eye on that person, and I will tag that person to make sure, okay, you've got your parrot home now. You're going to
perfect.
what happens now, and if I don't hear, but yep, there's Maria Sullivan with Papa Yago House. And if that person isn't engaging, I may reach out and say, Maria, I haven't heard from this person in a month, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's one way to, I mean, that's been very successful. So Diane, I know we wanted to talk about at least like working with the, let's say from your perspective, the dog, from my perspective, any undomesticated animal, working with it in the here and now. Where do we, you know, somebody adopts a dog from a rescue, boom, they bring it home. Number one, if we're lucky, we have a history or have some kind of information from that dog's background. A lot of times we don't. And a lot of times I tell people in the animals that I work with, I may not know anything about this animal. In my line of work, I don't necessarily need to know. I will find out that information myself through beginning training the animal. And a lot of times I am fed a lot of different or information that past people that work with this animal think the animal knows or think the animal understands or think the animal likes. And then I start working with the animal and I'm like, I am not seeing this at all. So, and it's so important in my live streams, people will hear me say, if you don't know the animal, train it. Training and communication. You will learn so much about that animal and that individual through that training.
Yes. Yeah.
So any input there to get?
Yeah, working with the animal in front of you is a phrase that has been used with people working in behavior training a lot. So you work with the animal in front of you. So what does that mean? It, like you said, it's sometimes you have a history and that's great, but it's not the end all of everything because there's a reason to that history. So I like to do an intake form, which is from the dog guardian's perspective. Then I like to do a functional assessment if I can, locally especially, which is from my perspective, right? So we have the owner's perspective, then we have my perspective, and they might be different. As you said, the behavior that the owner is seeing, they're not understanding, they're defining it in certain terms where we would look at it quite differently. And then with the canine emotional detox and why I feel stress is so important, if I have a dog-dog aggression case or human aggression, without fail, I require a canine emotional detox. It gives me 3 days with that dog, looking behind the scenes, and that's from the dog's perspective. So then we have a team, the guardian, me, and the dog. So if we don't hear from the dog, we don't really know what's going on, right? So we have all of those elements in place so that we can develop a team to work with that animal if we need to, and really get them results-oriented, long-lasting behavior change.
So when you do an assessment, Diane, what exactly does that mean?
Well, it's about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on, what's going on. And I have certain elements. Let's say I've got a dog aggression coming up shortly. The dog is actually lunging and barking and so biting the dog. So he wants to bite dogs. So immediately you're thinking, well, stop putting him in those situations where he can bite the dog. He has to rehearse this behavior. I want to start my functional assessments with see the dog and how the owner is interacting with them. What skills does he have right now? Then I might work with fake dogs to see what his distance, duration, and distraction levels are. And I treat those fake dogs just as if they were real dogs. And if we can work through that, or I watch body language very closely, I don't want to take them over threshold. I just want to see the point at which they start giving me calming or stress signals. And then I know how far you can go, or when the animal is distressed. Body language is so important. And a lot of dog owners do not know body language. I'll say, well, what did your dog just say to you? And I get glazed over eyes because they weren't paying attention to what their dog was saying to them, listening with your eyes, right? And then as it goes forward, I want to talk to the owner. I want to get a feel for how they're handling. I want to get a feel for who they are, how they learn. And it's not just always about the dog, because a lot of times guardians put dogs into situations that they shouldn't be putting them into, and they don't realize that it's not putting them into situations all the time that's going to change them. It's taking them out of the situations and then easing them into, I like to call it re-socialization in a lot of cases, because there are socialization deficits. And as Dr. Ian Dunbar said, this dog will be catching up for the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm. So, like, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about some different situations. Like when I'm working with an animal and I see it shows behavior related to being concerned on whether its ears move, fur or feathers fluff up in certain areas. And I know that parrots shake. I was thinking about this. They'll do a body shake to release stress. So that's something a lot of parrot owners don't know. And when I see that from a bird, I'm looking at it like it just roused why, or what's happening in the environment where that bird needed to shake to release some of that stress. Some of these stressors that dog caretakers may not be aware of that they are seeing. Can you give us some examples?
Well, I like to watch, lower level things too, like even just displacement sniffing, sniffing out of context. I like to stop what I'm doing if I see that, or yawning, or a lip licking, or turning the head away, or turning to the back, turning away from. And I like to watch the respiration. If the respiration goes up, then I know that we're headed into territory we don't want to be in. But also, are they pacing? Are they tiptoeing? Are their whiskers splaying out? Watching the whole body language. How is their tail set? Is their body tense? Are they stiff? I want to see all of that, and I want to point it out to the guardian too as we go ahead, because in the case of the Mexican dog I'm working with now, because it's so fresh, because I was just there yesterday, so he is very worried about the environment. He's kind of fearful and cautious, and so we take him somewhere, and he sees two kids and a person, and they're on the swings, and he yawns, and I said, okay, we're done here. Okay, I'm not going to wait for him to escalate. He just told me he's uncomfortable with something. And so when you see those lower level calming signals, you need to just regroup, move him away, and maybe you can go back. But right now he's telling you, okay, I'm not comfortable with this. If you the high stress signals, you just forgot about all those other things they were telling you. You weren't listening so that you could intervene and move them away, abort what you were doing. They're going to tell you a lot. For one little Sky, who was an extreme resource guarder, his repertoire is lick, 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 lick. He like 3 or 4 or 5 times. So you really have to pay attention to that. Then you know that he's escalating just by licking, okay? And then something could snap at that point. So yes, and in the work that you do, reading multiple different animals' body language is so important. And I like to work with different animals because it teaches me about dogs, okay?
Yeah.
When I'm working with different animals, it makes me more aware at a heightened level of how dogs are responding, because we do things with dogs that you would never do with a parrot, right? Or I don't, but people feel that they have the license to do horrible things with dogs that you wouldn't do with a parrot or a lion, or you might try, but you wouldn't get very far with all of that. So,
and that's, I mean, one of the things, like, I have you on here, and I love supporting the work you do and other great dog trainers too, when we may force dogs to do certain things because
we
hopefully
can.
I was gonna say, hopefully they're resilient. But I like to back up the science behind what you're talking about. And I'm like, I just want to go out and say, okay, you may be able to force your dog to do this. How are you going to force this monkey to do this? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because you may be able to do it once, but that's the only time you're going to be able to do it.
Exactly. And with dogs too, I think that memory stays with them. Then they start to fear that man who, or men in general, who might have hurt them, or women who may have hurt them. I always tell people dogs are not stupid. They know exactly what you're doing and how you're doing it. And so I love, I think it's Pat Miller who says, I'd rather have a ton of treats in my pocket than hurt an animal. I'm not sure if that's her exact quote. We get it, reinforcing what they're doing right. So it's a paradigm shift for people. It sometimes is a paradigm shift for trainers as well, to go from looking at what the animal's doing right and highly reinforcing that, whatever that means, right? If it's not reinforcing to the animal, it's not reinforcing. So you have to spend some time looking at what is reinforcing to my animal, instead of looking at what they're doing bad all the time. So, oh, my dog did this and my dog did that. Well, what did you do? And what did you do beforehand, and what was happening in the environment, and why is the dog doing it? Why do they expend the energy? Mostly for survival.
And a lot of animals, especially the ones that I work with, a lot of the ones I work with are in enclosures, so their choices are already limited. And a lot of times, people will approach the enclosure with an intention of what they want the animal to do. And we go at that animal, we approach that animal with little information. And a lot of times these animals are just looking for information. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do?
Right.
And if you give them that information, there's little to no stress involved. There's no use for force. And a great line of communication can begin. And you will see every time you approach that enclosure that animal is eager and right there waiting for you. Give me information.
Exactly. And that's kind of why I like clicker or mark reward training as well. And I used to take my parrots to my dog classes so that people could see that they don't have a collar, they don't have a leash, right? So I would them clicker train my parrots, so that they could understand that that's all you need is to tell them what you want them to do by marking it and reinforcing it, and then that behavior will strengthen. And it was like a light bulb moment came up over the head, like, oh, I can work like that with my dog too. Well, yes, you can.
And it's a lot easier.
They're to please, right? And they don't want to make mistakes. They want to do what works.
Yeah. And so for people who may not, they may be like, okay, so I want to bridge and reinforce for letting the animal know that's the behavior I'm looking for, that's earning you the reinforcer that's coming. A lot of times, like when I tell people are like, where do I even begin? And I say, you don't even have to start with that particular behavior. Just start getting them understanding the bridge or the marker. Start with a simple target, a nose target. Just start with these little things where the animal is learning, oh, when she says the word good, something comes to me of value. And then,
Exactly.
so the animal starts learning when she requests that I do something, there's always in it for me. So then the teamwork begins. And it's
Exactly.
not
And I know with animals,
me. What's
yeah,
that?
I know the animals that you work with, a lot of times it does start with targeting. And I love targeting. We're always teaching sit and lie down and all this, but my default in like a puppy class would be to teach the puppies how to target first, so that you're interacting with them. They're moving forward, they're interacting, they can't wait to see the target. You can non-confrontationally move them or teach them many, many, many different things without even touching them. I mean, as humans, I think we always have to touch the animal, but you can train a lot without ever touching an animal.
Yeah. And some of the work that I do when I'm first working with an animal, I mean, number one in my mind is I want to empower that animal. That is
Yes.
my priority with every animal that I engage with. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll determine, well, I observe, I do a lot of things, but then I determine, and where do I begin with this animal? Do
Mm-hmm.
I begin with physical contact? Do I begin with protective contact? Do I begin with off contact? And sometimes I will start off contact training where I don't even touch that animal. And then through time, then I determine, is this animal going to be stressed if I do touch it? And do I have to touch it? If I don't have to touch it, then I'm not going to.
Mm-hmm.
So I can train and interact with an animal and get an animal to go in on a scale, in a crate, whatever. And if I don't have to touch it, I'm not going to, because and I know that a lot of people feel like they want to touch, they want to kiss, they want to cuddle. With some of the animals I work with, they're not social animals. They're undomesticated.
Right.
You touch, kiss, or cuddle, it's going to leave a
Mm-hmm.
mark.
Right. Exactly. And when I go into an aggression case, I'm not going to touch the animal. I just, I don't have to. I'm going to gain the trust first, because the three things for me are safety, trust, and building confidence with that animal. So I want to see them relax with me. I want them to give me permission to touch them. And I always have the 3-second rule. If I do touch them, it's 3 seconds, and then see how they handled that. So there's a lot that goes into it. And so with your work, of course, you need that non-confrontational. What people don't understand is that we can do that with cats and dogs and domestic animals, and, even horses, and worked with alpacas, llamas, all of them can learn to trust, feel safe with you, be confident. And then you've made big strides into that behavior modification realm. Well, now you can start to train them. Skills and behavior are different, training techniques, or build on behaviors that you want to see and do away with those that you don't. But you never have to touch the animal to do that. So,
yeah. So Diane, you mentioned when you start working with some dogs, if you see stress, you want to release that stress. Can you tell me or tell us, how are some of those? You have already mentioned some of the signs of stressors, what they look like: the lip licking, the pacing, the heavy respiration. When you see those types of stress, can you tell me or tell us how you relieve some of that stress?
well, if I'm working with an animal and I see those stress signals, of course, I just regroup what we're doing. We move away, we move the animal away, and I'm talking lower stress signals. I really don't want to see any stress signals from a dog when I'm working them, with another dog or with humans, right? So we regroup. Was the distance too short? What duration was too long? What were we doing? What did another distraction come into the environment, etc.? But if we're talking about intense canine emotional detox and stress release, I want to do an intensive 3 days of stress release with the dog. And in my book, I have a cycle that I intensify. I'm flipping through here just so I can whip it up so I can show you. I should have had that up. But it's a cycle of things that, I don't know if you can see it. To release stress, you have to get rid of the physiological things that are going on in the body. And stress is normal. Let's just understand that, and that it's okay. And that you want to keep within those normal stress ranges, and then you want to build eustress. Okay, you want to build that good stress. So you want to do a relaxation period. You want to make sure that you're getting that deep REM sleep, which is not going to happen maybe even in a first cycle. You might have to do a second and a third, especially for dogs that are chronically stressed. They can't learn, they can't process. The brain actually, the hippocampus actually shrinks if they're under too much stress, and the amygdala intensifies. Okay, so you have heightened awareness, and they just can't come down from anything. So you've got to reach that level of sleep. I think sleep is just as important as exercise, which I look at as physical exercise, building muscles and you know, helping with bone structure. But if you're exercising a dog and they're stressed, you're building glucocorticoids, not releasing them. Okay, so exercise should be stress-free or low stress, normalized stress. And then enrichment, like you do. Enrichment is so important. You have to activate the sensory mechanisms of the dog. Toys for dogs are really important. And a lot of aggressive or reactive dogs don't know how to play. They don't know how to self-soothe. They haven't been taught, so they make their own fun, right? Which is not always what humans want to see. And then you have physical movement. It could be anything. Because I'm a guild certified, you know, Tellington touch practitioner, I really believe in certain ways to touch an animal that's not just pet, 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 right? Touching an animal is very important, and how you're touching them, and moving them through obstacles, having them become aware of where their body is in space is all a big part of it. And then problem solving, which is different than well, it can be the same as enrichment. It depends on what you're doing with that animal. Problem solving, using their brain, helping them be thinking dogs. That's what we do with clicker training. That's why you clicker train. You're developing a thinking dog, a dog who can think before they do something, make good decisions, I call it, which dogs who are reacting or aggressive, they're not making good decisions in their life. That is the decision that they have to make. So we want to teach them what other decisions to make, changing neurological patterns actually in the brain. And so you have to release stress, or the dog is not going to learn as well. And not just dogs, but any animal. If I've got a parrot that's stressed, or a bunny that's stressed, this bunny is going to do nothing but want to survive, and not unless I teach it something else. And in training, I call it teaching, because that role has been bestowed on us, because these animals don't have their parents, or often they're in an enclosure. They rely on us for that teaching, and we're teaching the good, the bad, the ugly every moment that we're with that animal. Everybody says, well, how long should I teach in a day? Or I say, you're always teaching. So just use it, you know, and continue to teach. And anytime you interact with that animal, it's the same all the time.
Yeah, and I will back up what you say. A lot of people hear me say all the time, if that animal can see, hear, smell, touch, feel you, you are training it, whether you realize it or not. The key question is, what are you training?
Yes.
And a lot of times you hear people say, and people have stopped saying this around me, so it's either been positively punished or I found a replacement behavior, where when people tell me, oh, I have that dumb dog, I have a stupid dog. The dog is a product of its environment. And if you are its teacher, we can learn how to do
Yeah.
better.
Exactly. Yeah. People watch what they say too around me in those veins too, because, but I really have to say, when I hear that, I say, well, we could say this instead. Maybe we could term this, because people like to apply labels. And that's what we do as humans. We have words that we can apply labels. But these animals, these critters, they don't know the labels that we have. They're only acting out of the emotions that they feel, what they're feeling, what's happening in the environment at the moment, or how they've been taught to respond to something. So in behavior modification, we're just changing the way they look at things, and we're teaching them how to respond in a different way. We're changing neurological pathways. Like, they might always be fearful, but we can make that fear smaller and teach them to do something else, right? That fear will come back if they are presented with the same structure, the same environment, the same things that are going on in the environment. And then that will come back because it's a survival mechanism.
Yeah. And touching on counter conditioning, retraining the animal. And we can do this. Obviously, it's probably a good majority of the work that you do. It's a good majority of the work that I do. For me, it's a luxury if I get to work with an animal, a young animal. And there's so much misinformation out there, such as an animal being too young. I have never met an animal too young to begin teaching. It's already learning. Is it learning what you want it to? Because if not, you're going to have to retrain that at some point. And whether the behavior is desirable or undesirable by us, the behavior is serving a purpose for the animal, or it wouldn't be happening.
Exactly. Right. And that's where breeders are so important, because that learning starts out of the womb and, continues while the animal is with the breeder. And so, it is their responsibility to provide whatever that puppy needs to go on to real life, because they're not with their moms that long, and that can be stressful when they leave their mom. So, and if the person who's getting this puppy doesn't handle that correctly, and adds more stress, then pretty soon we've got a puppy that's biting or frustrated, or, and all kinds of things are going on. So yes, they're always learning, no matter what we're teaching. If I yell at my dog, he just learned that I turned into a horrible monster, and I'm just might be barking with him, or, if I'm telling him to be quiet for barking, which I don't, because I have a 3-bark rule. So, so there are many, many things that you can do besides what you think you should do because you want to do it. What is the animal doing? Why are they doing it? And how can you change it through the techniques that you're using?
Yeah. And it's important, like you mentioned, we brought up breeder, we brought up shelter, rescues. We've talked about trainers. I know somebody earlier commented that they've not been set up for success via using many local trainers. And this is where, if we're going to adopt, if we're going to buy an animal, if we're going to search for a trainer, it's our responsibility to educate ourselves. And find out what's important. And that is why I do these free weekly live streams, to try to educate people. That's why I have guests like you on here to tell people, set them up for success. What do you need to know? What can make you more successful in the future, whether you're going to a breeder, whether you're going to a shelter, whether you're looking for help with behavior or preventing behavior. What do you look for? For those of you that are following us on here, most of you know my approach, my background. Most of you have met Diane whether here on Coffee with the Critters or following the work that you do. That's why it's so important to educate yourself. And that is what I'm doing, is providing education to set people up for success. And believe me.
And you do that very well. And I applaud you on that, because if people need to be a part of your programs and listen to you, I mean, we all learn so much from you every week, and just please keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. Thank you. When I see people wanting to continue to learn, that is the reinforcer behind why I continue to do what I do. And a lot of the work that I do, I'm trying to find scenarios that are relative to the work that you do as well. A lot of people are knowing that I'm working very intently with 15 alligators right now. And 13 of these gators are small, young, and learning. 2 of these gators are older. And a lot of people say, what do you teach a gator? And that always gets me. I'm like, just wait, watch, I'll show you. And a lot of people will tell me, Diane, you work with birds. What do you train a bird to do? And I'm just like, oh, come here.
Exactly.
Let me feel your brain.
Exactly.
You know? But with these gators, they are a classic example of, they are always watching you. They may be still, their eyes may not be moving, but you're walking around and they are watching every move you're making. And with these gators, I'm doing, go into the water when I ask you to go into the water. And that's where I begin training, using high rates of reinforcement. That is where I want you to stay until I ask you to do otherwise. Then comes a target. And believe me, I just made a mistake 2 weeks ago that has spent me the past week and a half trying to correct on my part. But I like showing those mistakes to tell people that everybody makes mistakes. If you are
Everybody does. Exactly. The top professionals in the world have made their mistakes, and that's how we learn what to do or what not to do in the future, or how to renovate what we're doing. And you're very brave dealing with alligators. And, I was supposed to, in Tellington Touch, we deal with a lot of animals. And so one of my animals was a boa constrictor that I was supposed to work with in one of the teachings. And I'm like, no way. I'm not working with a boa constrictor. And they did not make me. Okay. So the deal was, I had to desensitize myself to that boa constrictor, and they were counter conditioning me without doing anything. So they said, okay. And I just stood back and watched everybody else interact with the boa constrictor. And then pretty soon I'm like, my distance has decreased. I'm a little closer, and I'm like, oh, well, if they can do it, then I can do it. Right. And that's basically how we train the dog. We get a little closer. Okay. I can be closer and longer with that boa constrictor, and pretty soon it's over my lap and I'm doing T-touch on the boa constrictor, and I'm like uninhibited because I'm no longer afraid of it. And I think that's really big to understand when you're working with the dog, is that's what you're trying to achieve, because it's longer lasting.
Yeah.
It's
and
longer. I will remember that for the rest of my life, and now I'm not afraid of that particular snake.
And a lot of times I'll tell people, what does afraid mean? Afraid means I don't have enough information. And so if I don't have, and sometimes I'll find myself usually not afraid, because I won't put myself in a situation, and I had a situation very similar to yours, Diane, where I'm responsible for a lot of reptiles out here, and one of them is snakes. And somebody came up to me with a boa constrictor and said, here, want to hold it? And I'm like, no, I don't, because I don't know this animal. I don't know its history. I don't know what to look for. So I shaped my comfort level, and I started with, we got in an African bush snake, which is a tiny little snake about the size of my pinky finger, about big as round. And it was probably about 15 inches long. But I sat and watched him first too. Does he have fangs? No. Does he bite? Yeah. What is he biting? When is he biting? And then I watched people handle him. And then I started moving closer, and then I touched the tip of its tail. And then I began holding it, and then I moved my way up to size of snakes to hold. And my point is saying, if I'm afraid, it's because I have not gathered enough information.
You either have not gathered enough information, or you have been gathering the wrong information. And I think a lot of times dogs, they're gathering the wrong information. And so that's when it gets hard to change, because attitudes and habits are hard to change, but that's what you have to do. So it's a combination of both of those things. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And every individual is just that, an individual. I heard this on a podcast. I listened to a lot of podcasts on applied behavior analysis, or I listened to a lot of audiobooks on Skinner. And one great thing I had heard on a podcast, I was like, bam, that is a perfect example. And it explains so much. So many times, I'll talk in the field of dogs, for example, where people are like, oh, I'm not afraid of dogs. Every dog likes me. Or somebody will say, oh, I'm not afraid of your Rottweiler, or I've had Rottweilers all my life. I know them very well. When I hear people say that, and when people like clump a species together, I know German Shepherds because my great uncle had a German Shepherd. On this podcast, somebody said it's so important to focus on the individual. Just because I'm a teacher of 4th grade and I have a student in my class named Sarah, doesn't mean that next year when another Sarah comes in, I'm going to clump her into, oh, I know Sarahs. I've had Sarahs in my class before.
Good example. Excellent example. And Susan Friedman says, work with the dog that's in front of you. And you really should. You could have a history or whatever, but who is this individual that you're working with? And that's why I love my stress release program, because I get to know that individual from the inside out. So very important.
So Diane, before we wrap up, do you want to tell us about your stress program? And I will mention your book as well.
Yeah, I wrote a book about it, so it's hard to say.
Okay, should we just talk about the book?
But basically, you are neutralizing the bad stress chemicals that have developed in the dog's body, because what we don't see in the dog is also important, the physiology that's happening, and that you can't get rid of stress. So is stress chronic? Is it just distress? Whatever stress it is, you should normalize it, because the spikes should come down quickly when a dog, sees something. They get stressed. We get stressed, but we should come down quickly from it, not level out and never be able to come down from it. So the stress release program is an intense 3 days of stress release before behavior modification or during behavior modification. It doesn't matter, but whenever it's done, it really helps the dog to learn better, learn faster, and retain more.
So is that what your book, and this is your latest book, correct?
This is my current book, yes.
Okay, so people can find this information?
Yeah, anywhere that books are sold, as I said. Dogwise is holding it, and it is in soft cover and ebook, whichever one that you would like to, buy. And it will help you before behavior modification to make sure that your dog is in a learning state so that they can retain more information, because they are now have normal stress patterns. They have come down from the damaging effects of acute stress. Distress, chronic stress will take longer because they've simply leveled out. If you think of a line, they've just leveled out. Every day is stressful for them. They can't come down from it. They can't sleep. they can't eat, you know, there's just a lot of things happening there. And you need to address that before you do behavior modification. A lot of people will say, well, I just taught them this and they're not learning. Well, they're not able to learn right now. Release their stress, and then they can learn better, faster, and retain more.
So this is probably a good book for every dog caretaker, shelter, breeder to have.
It is, and it's geared more for professionals as a workbook, and trainers and professionals and people who really understand what a lot of times a guardian looking at the book, yes, they can use it if they have a certain understanding of things, but it might be a little overwhelming. I would go right to chapter 11 and do the how-to. If I were a guardian, then I would just read that chapter first and go right to it. But what they won't be able to do is analyze what is happening. And a big part, the golden nugget of the stress release program is the analyzation of who that individual is. So it's all about who that individual is.
Well, with that being said, people can also contact you for online consultations, so it doesn't matter where in the world they are.
Yes, I'm still doing those all the time. There will be, of course, a second edition, and I'm looking at individual books like stress release for shelters, stress release for groomers, stress release for, daycare centers, and all of those little pieces that can come out of this one book that someone can grab and say, well, how can I do this in the shelter? How can I do this in my daycare? And so on and so forth.
And with you also travel and give workshops and present to different organizations, correct?
Absolutely. Yes, I've done many, and pre-COVID, and I've done many online post-COVID. So yes, but now as we get back into society, I'm redoing workshops again, and I welcome them. I love seeing the dogs change in that workshop while we're doing something. So that is a possibility. So you can contact me at my email. That's probably the best way to do it.
And I have your email up on the screen now, info@caninetlc.com. They can also reach you through your website, caninetlc.com.
There's a contact form on the website, and you can reach me through there as well. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, Diane, I told you this hour would fly by.
Zips by.
Yeah. So I want to thank you very much for coming on. It's great seeing you. Great seeing you healthy.
Thank you.
And I hope we see each other as our travels start back up again. I hope we see each other very soon. I'd like to take you out, buy a cocktail or a coffee or something.
Oh, I would love that. And I want to come and visit the center as well. And
I would love to have you
in the future.
Yes, let's do some training.
See you, just to see you.
Good to see you too, Diane. For those of you that are watching and want more information about the work that we do here at the Animal Behavior Center, we a lot of our information, not all, but a lot, is through our memberships. Level 1 for people living with companion animals. Level 2 for people more in the field of profession of working with applied animal behavior. We also have our projects, which are species specific. We have a lot. You can find it all on our website. We have our webinars. I won't go through everything, all this right now. You can find that on our website. Once again, Diane, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you, everybody.
If there's ever anything I can do for you, Diane, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.